Ladies, gentlemen, and hurrah of all ages, Season 7 begins today in Diablo 4, and whether you've done your sort of preparation research or not, today we're going to go in and go over your entire set of goals to efficiently get a character from level 1 up to level 60, and then eventually through to Torment for difficulty as well. For pure speed, you want to skip the expansion campaign. I recommend starting on normal difficulty at level 1, but if you feel like you're obliterating enemies immediately, you can try bumping it up to hard, and so on and so forth for the other difficulties. But if you ever reach a point where enemies are taking more than a couple of seconds to kill, then you should probably drop back down one, as the efficiency gain from increased difficulty tier has a lot less impact as soon as it slows you down in the actual killing. When you first spawn into the game then, go to the wardrobe through your character panel and stick on a pet so you can automatically pick up currency drops on the ground. Then I recommend going over and doing the Raising Spirits side quest beside the world tier changing statue in Kyovashad. This is the quest that asks you to just walk over and cheer at some guards, and then as a reward you get some bundled herbs and you can make your first elixir as a result, as generally speaking you want to be as close to 100% uptime on elixirs as possible while you're leveling. No matter which elixir it is, as basic elixirs will give you 5% bonus experience gain, and advanced elixirs, which you can start making at higher levels, will give you 8% bonus experience gain while active too. Then if we have mercenaries already unlocked, you want to go out and sort these out. Subo is great right at the start because he will help you build up a nice early stockpile of herbs to make elixirs with, but outside of specifically herb farming, you'll want Variana as your main mercenary for the movement speed bonus that you get from her massacre bonus. This is running under the assumption that we will have the mercenaries auto-unlocked from skipping campaign in the new season, but we don't know 100% what that will look like so far, so this step may have to wait until later on, but this is what we expect. The next step then is to go into the start of the season quest itself, which should be at the Tree of Whispers in Hawazar. As you begin this, it will send you to the new regional subzone takeover event for the season, which is called headhunts. Within these, you'll find a new enemy type called the Headrotten, you'll find a bunch of events around the place, and you'll find a whole bunch of new and altered boosted Whisper of the Dead activities. As you kill enemies and complete objectives here, you will spawn roots in the open world, which you can then interact with to spawn even more monsters and increase the density of the activity further. For all intents and purposes, this is essentially just Helltide with a larger than normal focus on Whispers of the Dead specifically being the actual main reward, and the caches that you get from that too. This activity is essentially going to be your home for the majority of your leveling experience at least some of the endgame too, as it just will be densely packed with large amounts of monsters. It'll be tied to the season journey and the season quest line, both of which are important, and possibly most importantly it will be shared with a bunch of other players automatically. Open world activities like this one do not scale monster difficulty up with group size or with player numbers of players around, which is something that things like dungeons and pit runs do, which means it is purely faster and more effective to work with other players for open world stuff, which headhunts are. You can do this just sort of passively because tons of people will be in these zones by default, or you can purposefully group up with some friends or even use the party finder function in the game to look for a group of like-minded players to blast through headhunts with as you level. As well, while doing this, you should be constantly just increasing the Coven's favor reputation track, as well as gaining the resources to unlock witchcraft powers and weave these into your setup too. When you get to level 15 and then level 30 as well, you'll automatically have parts of your class mechanics unlocked. Expertise for warriors, specializations for rogue, spirit boons for druid, enchantment for sorcerer, spirit hall for spiritborn, and then golems for the necromancer. This means that we no longer have to stop doing the efficient farm activity of headhunt at level 15 to go get it. It'll all happen on its own, but make sure that you actually set up that mechanic so that it's working when you hit the appropriate level. Then you pretty much want to just keep spamming headhunt for the majority of the rest of your leveling journey, using any breaks that you take to take care of your inventory and salvage your gear. And I'd say while this will both be class and build dependent as far as the timing, level 23 is when you can get your key passive now for every build in the game, if you have all these skill points from Renown at least, which makes it a really solid time and power curve to go and collect any legendary aspects that your leveling build wants from guaranteed dungeon sources. Alternatively, if there's a class specific legendary that you want that isn't from a guaranteed dungeon that requires RNG to find, you can choose to do your class mechanic unlock quest manually, even though you have the mechanic unlocked, and what this will do now is give you at the end a guaranteed archetype cache. The example we were given in the dev stream is for Sorcerer, maybe it'll be a pyromancy cache, and this will have legendaries and tempering manuals related specifically to pyromancy skills. Obviously this won't always be a hit, there's still some level of randomness involved, but it gives you an option of another place to search for a power boost for your character if you feel like you need it. Aside from this, there's also the season journey itself that's absolutely worth talking about, and theoretically the season journey has been fully reworked for season 7, and the early chapters of this will not only be easier to achieve while doing efficient leveling activities, which is good, but also reward reward more relevant rewards too, specifically more of the archetype caches, like the one that we just talked about. So again, if you're looking for RNG dropping aspects for your class, level 23 is a good time to do Season Journey 2 because of the power spike that you'll have at this level, and the Season Journey should just be another way to hunt these within Season 7 a bit more actively than you could in the past. Then moving on from level 23 upwards until right around level 50, I still fully absolutely recommend doing Headhunt as an activity, and at any point during that, once you have some legendary aspects backing up your setup too, you can try setting difficulty up to expert and seeing if it feels worth blasting on this to you. Again, this will require you to judge the speed difference between expert and hard, but this is around the right time to try it for most players. Through this, then you will then hit level 50, ideally after only an hour or two at most, depending on the clearing speed and efficiency of your setup, and at this point you have two main routes forward. The scaling from level 50 up to level 60 is sort of nuts now, both in terms of equipment drops and monster scaling as well, and there are two ways to look at this depending on what you want. If you want to just hit level 60 itself as fast as possible and as easily as possible without thinking about what will happen after you get to 60, then you can do all of level 50 to 60 purely through strongholds, specifically doing them on normal difficulty tier. The stronghold XP reward at the end does not scale with world tier, and the XP at the end is actually pretty significant, so you can basically just go run around on easy mode normal tier getting yourself up to level 60 through strongholds. However, the negative to this option is that your gear will not be able to keep up with you, and it will be a fair bit behind you when you hit level 60 enemies when you first hit cap. This can be solved by, when you hit 60, going to do things like Headhunt or your first couple of nightmare dungeons, though this will be harder than it would be if, instead, you spent 50 to 60, the levels, just continuing doing more and more headhunts. This method would theoretically be a little bit slower than doing these strongholds, not by a massive amount by any means, but the difference is that you are still actively farming gear the whole time that you're doing it, which should help you keep up with the ridiculous scaling from 50 to 60 and onwards. Once you hit 60 then, that's when you should absolutely be on penitent difficulty if you weren't before, fix up your gear, get everything to a decent item level that you're wearing, do a couple of nightmare dungeons to make sure that you've got a few paragon glyphs to drop and then get a slight boost to paragon level itself too, and then start doing your pit runs to get you up to tier 20 as fast as possible, which will then put you into Torment 1, the very beginning of the proper endgame. That said, especially for those who weren't around last season for whatever reason, the gap between difficulty tiers in Torment is quite large compared to what difficulty tiers used to be, and so Torment 1 is a massive leap away from Torment 4 still, which is the highest tier. So with that said, once you are in Torment 1, one of the main things to start focusing on is getting any particularly specific loot that you need to make your build function, whether it be a unique that you can target farm from a certain ladder boss that you need, or maybe perhaps just targeting a specific slot for legendary aspects through the Murmuring Obol vendor to try and get your RNG drops. But either way, this is the time where you want to enter your sort of mid-game build, because now you have access to a lot more resources than you would while leveling, but you won't quite have enough yet either to enter your true endgame setup. And so now is when you want to build that is made around farming as quickly as possible and with the lowest gear requirements you can make to have that happen. For pure raw experience gain, you can start doing Infernal Hordes as an endgame activity now as well, as they give great XP, but they are limited by the entry keys, and this is also when I'll be starting to do root holds myself properly too. Root holds are the new specific mini dungeon tied to the headhunt activities. The actual sigils for these will come from Whispers of the Dead caches, and these promise to be relatively quick and densely packed, with a decently solid reward to time ratio within them. This is also when you'll want to start working more towards the Season Journey 2, as this will help you out while gearing with the specific archetype caches that we mentioned earlier. Nightmare dungeons as well are great for getting glyphs to drop in larger numbers. Helltide is useful for specific slot targeting when looking for aspects or uniques, and then I know I've said it a ton, but still, the Headhunt activity. Headhunt will get even more rewarding as you progress. The bosses will start showing up and giving you the materials for the occult gems, which are another part of the seasonal power-ups in themselves, and of course the fact the whole activity is built around Whispers of the Dead means that the actual main rewards scale up per difficulty tier the same way that Whispers of the Dead caches do, and Whispers can be incredibly valuable in the higher Torment tiers. Then outside of that, focus on your pits to level up your glyph XP, and of course climb pit tiers specifically to unlock further Torment difficulties, where you can essentially do more of the same of all the stuff but for higher reward ratios, unlocking Torment 2 at pit tier 35, Torment 3 at pit tier 50, and then Torment 4 at pit tier 65. As well, worth mentioning quickly before we end off is the Caressed Undercity. This is a new activity from Vessel of Hatred, and it has its moments of high value, but it entirely depends on the tributes that you find. If you find an increased experience gain tribute while leveling, it is actually worth doing, but without that, it's just not. Outside of that, in the endgame, the main tributes that you will look to run are the one that gives masterworking materials, the one that gives boss summoning materials, and then if you're feeling lucky, there's nothing wrong with running the other ones too, but those two are just the most efficient and meaningful tributes by far. And on that note, for the actual ladder ladder bosses as well, you basically want to do the smallest amount of ladder bosses that you need to get your build online to begin with. Higher difficulty tier bosses have higher chances of things like mythic uniques dropping, and they require the same amount of materials to summon as Torment 1 bosses do to make a Torment 4 boss. So essentially, every boss material that you use before Torment 4 is lowering your overall chances of getting mythics per material used. So you don't want to be too stingy with them. You still want to get the base uniques that you need to actually have your build function, but you don't want to go like mythic unique farming too early on is the main thing that I'm trying to say here. That just about does it for today, everyone. The season will be live soon, if it isn't already by the time that you're watching this, so I hope you're having fun, and hopefully this helps you reach the more meaningful parts of the game a little bit quicker or more comfortably too. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.